Hey there, I'm Pete Townsend, and this is Money Never Sleeps. We look inside the minds of entrepreneurs and at the crossover of startups, enterprise, finance, technology, and life as we know it. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is sponsored by Philip Lee, one of Ireland's fastest growing corporate law firms and expert advisors at the heart of the Dublin and London startup, fintech, and crypto communities. John Wu is president of Avalanche, an A16Z-backed technology company building the next generation blockchain platform, Avalanche. And he joins me on this episode, originally recorded as part of the Techstars Web3 Convo series of fireside chats, powered by the Launchpool Web3 Techstars Accelerator program in Ireland. John's objective is to open up financial services and products to all, and he leverages his expertise from over 20 years as a fintech executive and technology investor to create a blockchain-enabled solution for originating, issuing, and trading financial assets. Previously, John was CEO of Shares Post Digital Assets, a tech investor and founder of the global hedge fund ShareView Capital, backed by Blackstone, and also worked with Tiger Management and Kingdown Capital. In this episode, John shares insights on bringing passion to projects, building teams and communities in Web3, the sheer joy of bringing hundreds of companies onto Avalanche this year, insights on opportunities in rapid growth areas in Web3, and what makes a great Web3 project. All right here on Money Never Sleeps.
Hey everyone, I'm here with John Wu, president of Avalanche. What we're doing here, folks, is that as the Web3 space is moving at a lightning fast pace, we wanted the Web3 founder community to have the benefit of some of the leading minds globally, even before we kick off the Launchpool Web3 Techstars Accelerator here in Dublin, Ireland in March of next year. I'm Pete Townsend. I lead that program. I'm an early stage startup investor and advisor for the last 5 years, focused on fintech and digital assets. So just to give you guys an intro on John, he is the president of Avalanche, as I mentioned, which is an Andreessen Horowitz or A16Z backed technology company building the next generation blockchain platform, Avalanche. John, when you and I spoke a couple of weeks ago, it was great to hear some of the things that you guys are working on. Great to hear your experience as well. And we thought sharing it with this Web3 community that's growing incredibly quickly all across the world, we thought that would be a good idea. So why don't we start maybe just, share a bit about your backstory and how you got to this point, and then we can get into some of the detail around Web3 and what Avalanche are doing.
To understand my background, I think it's important to know where I came from. And as a kid, I had like two real passions. One was sports. I played a lot of competitive sports, organized sports. Luckily, I was good enough to play a little bit in college as well. And the other thing I loved was technology. I think I was the first kid on the block with a Commodore 64 programming in BASIC back in the day. I think Pete's laughing because he knows that. How the audience here probably has no idea what a Commodore is.
I had a TI-44 and I was alphabetizing my spelling words. Till I figured out it was quicker just to write them down than to type them in with my hunt pack.
Awesome. But I love sports and I love technology. But as I grew older and I decided to go apply to colleges and then try to choose a career, I realized why I like sports and why I like technology. For sports, I played organized and team sports. I love people. I love getting to know people. I love sharing what I knew. I love leading teams. And I love making everyone get the best version of themselves. And when I was able to do that, I felt like I became better for it as well. So it was sports. Yes, I love sports, but I love people and I love working as a team. And from a tech perspective, I was, on the cutting edge, programming in BASIC. I'm sure no one even knows what that language is now, playing the latest games on Atari and all that. But what I really liked about technology, if I really looked down deep into it, was innovation. And innovation, not just in technology, but also in marketing, how to do things differently, innovation in business development. Blockchain is the ultimate way to innovate going forward, in my opinion. And I know Pete and I are going to get into that later, so we'll discuss that. So with that understanding of myself, I applied to Cornell, was an economics major, and I played some sports there. And I see a lot of people in the chat room from Cornell Tech at Ithaca. So shout out to Cornell. Then I went to Harvard for business school. And I started my career as a tech investor at places like Tiger Management, Kingdown Capital. And my first entrepreneurial venture, I started my own hedge fund with the help of Blackstone. And then since then, I've had 3 more entrepreneurial experiences as a operator, as opposed to running an asset management firm. And the latest is what I think is the coolest and best company in the best space, Avalanche, the team behind Avalanche in the blockchain crypto space. Think of Avalanche like Apple, the company. And iOS, the operating system, is similar to Avalanche, except Avalanche is an open permissionless, operating system. And Ava Labs, the goal is to know the community very, very well. So if we think the community, by looking at the community, listening to feedback, wants music, Apple will either create on their own iTunes or incentivize players like Spotify to develop on their iOS. Same with Ava Labs. So if there's a need in something that the community wants, we'll parallel process really three paths. One path is develop the technology internally. Second is incentivize third parties to develop and existing companies on top of Avalanche. And the third path, which I think is most relevant for everyone on this call, is can we find the next great startup that needs help? Whether it is funding, whether it is helping them build a marketing community, whether it is help them from a tech perspective integrate it to Avalanche, or whether it is simply this dev relationship that they need. Those are the three paths we go about that. So it's really more like, iTunes, Spotify, and finding the next Spotify from young, smart, great developers and business people.
I gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. And you guys handle quite a lot of volume, right? And that when you and I first spoke, you were talking about 1,100 projects, I think, so far that you guys had seen this year, or at least come through your hands, and that you helped 400 of them. And, walking us through the pillars like you just did for how you work with them, but that's a lot of volume. And so how do you guys manage that?
So it's even more than 400 by now. And that was just like 2.5 weeks. Okay. Since we spoke. But what you're talking about, on a macro level is really about a company in hypergrowth in a hypergrowth industry. And to handle that volume ultimately starts with, again, people. When we look at hiring people and taking on projects, we're looking at people who have a few characteristics. One, obvious, functionally, they have to be very good at whatever they're doing, whether it's marketing or biz dev or technology. But they need a flexible mind. So I call it a T. So they're very good at something, but they can use that framework and work in an environment that's constantly changing and iterating to go to the next level, if you will. And you want to have people brought on who are very passionate about Web3, blockchain, crypto, so that it can really, really be a passion of love more than just about doing a job, if you will. And if you get those types of people, then really it's kind of like the next thing you do as a leader or an operator space is to give some sort of process so that people don't jump into each other's lanes too much. But if I do my job well and build this firm and hire people well, then the amazing thing I've seen is that you get the right people, they start building their own processes and they make my job actually even easier.
Yeah, I hear you. There's so many threads to pull on there, John. When you think about identifying within founders and within founding teams that there's certain things they're going to be good at, there's certain things that they need help with, is that, like you said, you're helping on the marketing side, on building communities, but also with the development engineering. Are you noticing a trend at all in terms of where the biggest needs are, whether that is on the commercial side or on the tech side?
I mean, the funny thing about that is there's a lot of trends, but I think the one trend that, I see as an entrepreneur in a space and that I know I have passion for, and when I talk to technology developers or biz dev or marketing, is all of these young, brilliant minds that are coming into this space do not want to work on legacy systems. They're motivated not only because it is a good job, they're motivated because they feel like they're on a cutting edge of an industry that can change other industries. We look for that type of passion when we, interview people, because that passion will get you through a lot of ups and downs. We don't want to glorify entrepreneurship too much because there are a lot of ups and downs. But if you're not really a strong believer in Web3, that is cool. Find something you're really, passionate about, because that's what's going to get you over all of the ups and downs. So the number one trend I see is that people want to work with passion and they have certain beliefs. So regardless of functionality, whether it's marketing, technology, there's functional trends, there's vertical trends, all of that. But the common thread through all these trends is, again, the passion and the belief that they're doing something that's special.
I got it. That makes sense. it's really interesting that, you can be passionate about development. You can be passionate about engineering, right? People can be passionate about marketing. People can be passionate about building communities. And if you're not passionate about development, but you absolutely love the commercial side, are you guys matching people up to say like an X Factor scenario where you've got a few folks say, in different teams perhaps that might be better working together? Do you ever get into that situation?
Yeah, that's actually very insightful. So in this deluge of projects coming to Avalanche for either funding or support, and we've filtered down to 400 that we can actually help. One of the things we do is match one person with another or one team with another team. There are definitely great, I'll give you an example, specific example. There's these two unbelievable engineers, really smart young guys. I think one was MIT, one was Cornell or whatever. They were friends from their first job together. And they were very good at what they were doing at this, call it traditional tech firm. They wanted to build something together. And they did not have complementary skills. They had overlapping skills. They had a complementary bond of entrepreneurship and friendship. So they are very talented people. They came to Ava Labs and Avalanche wanting to build on top of Avalanche. There was just a business mindset that they were missing, as well as a domain expertise. They wanted to do something in decentralized finance. They had this cool idea, but they didn't have any experience in that. Ironically, we were also talking to a different group of people. These are more older Wall Street type people who had lots of experience building products, structured products. And they knew the players in the space. They knew the competitive landscape. They had actual domain expertise. So we put them together. The story's still yet to be written. The book's not closed yet, but that's a perfect example how this compounding loops of network effects can really take hold in this Web 3.0 environment.
That's great to have that community, because there's founders that I've worked with before and founding teams that I've worked with before where it was clear that the founder had enough of a context on the industry that they were going into to make him dangerous or make her dangerous. And the CTO was a genius in blockchain, but really had no reference point to the traditional financial markets and how that all operated. I've spent enough time now on whiteboards or in front of whiteboards with a CTO talking through how things such as trading engines work and all of that. And then once you kind of explain that stuff, you just start to see the wheels turning and running off into the future. It's such an awesome experience to be able to do that. And it's great to be able to be in that position like you guys are when you get to put those people together and make that all happen. It's fantastic.
It's a lot of fun. And in the end, like I said, helping other people, you end up helping ourselves. We're going to have a great project, at the end on top of Avalanche.
Absolutely. Absolutely. For any of these startups that you're working with, there's going to be experiences from your own history in the industry and just from your own walk of life that you draw on to help guide them when you guys are working with them, especially when you see founders in a situation that you've been in before yourself. Are there any go-to experiences of yours that come to mind that you draw on regularly?
Okay. First of all, there are too many. Yeah. So that dates me and you, I guess. But if you want to, and I constantly share some of these in my Twitter. So at John, the number 1 Woo, you can follow me there, or I have a regular blog that I write on some of these experiences on my website. I'll talk about one experience though that can resonate really well. So there was this team I knew. There were about, 10 people. They just got funded from one of the top VCs in California, off to the races. They thought everything was they would like the talk of towns, really ready to run hard, ready to go. They needed to get growth capital. So the seed was to get them to a certain place, and they needed new capital to get to the next level. And all of a sudden, the capital markets, the bottom drops out. And it's seemingly like it was the end of the world because all these great growth plans were suddenly put on hold. Well, the people did not put anything on hold on this team. They continued to move on. It didn't really even matter to them. They were great developers. They were great people who had a business vision, and they continued to line up partnerships, continue to develop tech. That team was actually Ava Labs. And about 2 years ago, not quite 2 years yet, we all remember COVID hit and capital markets, and you had maker DAO situation in the crypto markets all collapsed at seemingly like one moment. And these great growth plans suddenly had to be reassessed. What do you do? Well, ironically, there was, and I've seen this like many cycles now, for better or for worse, I've gone through this now. This is like one team that actually, and I was part of it, did not panic at all. And the reason was because we all believed in what we're doing. We all love the space. And if we weren't going to grow that way, we were going to figure a different way to grow. And sure enough, we just powered through it. Luckily, things came back quicker than anyone anticipated. But even if it didn't, I think Avalanche will still be here today, and Avalanche will still be here today. And whether it would be a top, coin market cap, type of coin at 10 or 12, it may be 15 instead of 10 or whatever. But at some point, it was still going to, the end destination is still going to be the same, at the top of that list.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That resilience is such a big thing. And it's just, you find a way. If the idea is meant to happen, if that team and that business is meant to happen, you find a way to keep it going.
So that's funny you say the word resilience, because I was thinking about describing what I just talked about in real time using the word resilience. And resilience evokes the thought that you had a setback and then you have to like come back, and you got hurt, and you've like sports analog, like you power through a hamstring injury to end the race or do something. But the mindset was not as if we were stuck and we had to figure a different way. The mindset was, okay, so we just keep doing what we're doing at a, maybe a slower rate than a high growth rate. So I almost used that same word, but I decided that was not exactly, it wouldn't exactly conjure the right thought.
Yeah.
Audience mind.
Determination, focus.
Yep. Yes. And focus.
Yeah. And
like
this, what I like to say is wading through a sea of chaos in a Zen-like state.
I love that. That's great.
I don't know who I got that from, but I got that from somebody recently.
And most people who do that are really oblivious of the chaos because they're so focused. It's easier to be oblivious to the chaos because you're focused than to like have the talent to say, oh my God, there's chaos, but I have to be Zen-like.
Yeah, you do. You absolutely do. Speaking of some of these qualities of founders and of Web3 projects in general, what do you think some of the qualities are that will make a great Web3 project and eventually a great Web3 business startup?
This question is constantly asked of me from traditional venture capitalists, because a lot of traditional venture capitalists now are getting into the blockchain and crypto space and trying to figure out how to invest. It's also asked of me and my former hedge fund friends in technology who are trying to invest in this space. And I actually have this acronym, OpenFi, OPENFI, and I write about it in my blog. Feel free to go and I compare certain projects with traditional frameworks on how to evaluate. So, like the E part, experience of a team, I will just harp on one letter of the acronym. The experience ultimately is becoming more and more important in the space. Just like the example I use where I think 3 or 4 years ago, you can get away with just being a crypto native Greek coder and just like throw something out there and let's give it a shot and see if it sticks. The bar is being raised. So back to that example, you can't just do that anymore because great, you guys are super smart and you're young, you know nothing about business or the domain expertise. But suddenly I look over here, I have this team that has your talent and they have business experience and they have domain expertise. So if you're a venture capitalist now in the traditional Silicon Valley sense, you're looking at the latter, not the former. We help the former and match them up with others who are also. So we kind of like similar to Techstars, we incubate, accelerate at Labs for Avalanche.
Yeah, I hear you. It's an interesting context because you've got a lot of folks out there that in the traditional tech venture space that are like, well, listen, we'll bring a great team together and we'll see if they can get a great product off the ground. Always better to have an A team with a B product than the B team with the A product, right?
Yeah.
And then if that doesn't work and we can't find product market fit, we'll pivot, right? But if you do that in this space and you bring a great team together you start building a community, a really good community around this of people who will get behind your project and put passion into that, like you said before, John. And then you decide, well, wait a second, this project that we've just done a token sale for, actually, that's not going to fly. Let's go do something different. Your credibility's gone. Your community's gone. We talked about determination. We talked about focus, staying power, those types of things. How do you think that translates into the Web3 space relevant to some of the prior experiences, perhaps with more traditional tech ventures?
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the community aspect. So in the Web3 space, that network effect and that community that you're developing, that community is not just users of technology, but also developers and all the stakeholders in the environment, so to speak, the ecosystem. I think in Web3, if you really imbue the spirit of it, it's actually a little bit easier. And that's the hard part. Once you get the right mindset, it could be a little bit easier because you have a constant dialogue with your community and you can listen to them, you can give them feedback and they can give you feedback. And it is an environment where if you do that well, you're allowed to migrate. Again, you have to be down a sort of alley. You can't just like jump from one thing to a complete different vertical. But if you're down that alley and you're constantly getting that feedback from your community, and it's kind of distributed governance and the community is pushing you for these features, these products, then okay. So it goes back to my earlier analog. At Avalanche, we listen to the Avalanche community. When they want music, we'll say, okay, let's go at it all three ways. Let's figure out, ultimately, it's about getting music onto Avalanche. Ideally, it is from the community. Like whether it's from developers or community, it's not about, in Apple's case, it's ideally iTunes is more successful than Spotify. The bigger goal is to just make sure there's music on Avalanche. And ironically, in the open source Web3 world, it's better if the community, or Spotify in this example, is the winning platform. Even if it's two young guys who created from scratch, the third lane we talked about.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. There's so much happening in the space so quickly. The change is just, it's like, I compare it regularly to a glacier and climbing on a glacier where we're from one day to the next. If you try to climb on a glacier, you're never going to find the same trail back through because it's all melted and refrozen and moved. And this space is exactly like that.
Hey everyone, this is Pete. Let me tell you about the folks at Philip Lee. A few years ago, I was at my first venture capital industry dinner in Dublin, and honestly, I felt a bit lost. I bumped into Andrew Tizali, one of the partners at Philip Lee. He bought me a pint and introduced me to the team, and they took me under their wing. That take you under their wing approach has been what I've heard consistently from fintech and crypto startups who I know have worked with Philip Lee in Dublin and London to help them wrap the right legal framework around their business, fundraising, and regulatory needs. And I can't recommend them enough. Get in touch with the team at philiplee.ie or on moneyneversleeps.ie/Philip Lee to learn more.
Couple more questions before we kind of open it up to the crowd for their questions. But, just thinking about where you'd like to see this all go next with regards to Avalanche and Avalabs, anything that all of us should look out for as being signs of, hey, we're really doing well and really humming along. Not that you aren't already, but just kind of taking it to the next level, Well,
I mean, there are certain traditional metrics people look at, TVL, wallets, all of that. So from a TVL perspective, I think Avalanche now is above 11 billion, which is only a couple layer ones ahead of Avalanche. And, Avalanche is still one of the youngest chains out there. It's continued adoption, ultimately, in summary. So you talked about how we helped 400 different companies, and help means fund versus as well as marketing, as well as all sorts of, call it relationship capital as opposed to just transactional capital. I can tell you it's over 400 live dApps on Avalanche already.
Wow.
And when we spoke last, it was in the 300s.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's 400. That funnel, we talked about how hard it is to give help to so many things that are coming through. It requires us to hire even more now, more passionate people, because that, the top of the funnels actually needs to be wider now. And we have Avalanche seen another 200 that we're talking to for potential help just in the last 2 weeks. So it's literally drinking from a fire hose right now. I don't know what else to say, but it's just a lot of fun. It's great to be in. Every day is different. And we are making a difference to not just, Avalanche people, but the whole blockchain community and helping people live out their dreams. Like just those two young kids with more senior domain experts in structured finance.
I know. It's great. And it's wonderful to see the diversity of the projects that are coming, right? And I will, share with folks in terms of the types of companies that we're looking for with this accelerator is that I naturally, as I know you do, John, as well, have this long tail coming out of your past of traditional finance becoming digital. And how do we move faster and quicker with that? Because we know that the wealth that channel will bring into the Web3 space is significant. Coming out of that, there was a certain point in time over the last couple of years where that long tail coming out of the past has now branched into a number of different avenues. First question that we got from the crowd here today is, what are the products that you're most excited about launching next on Avalanche?
I love talking about that. And this ties into some of the trends. So obviously, DeFi is a big part of all ecosystems. I continue to love to see the innovation there where young, smart people are creating products and services that used to only exist in traditional finance for certain groups of people, institutions. That is a continuing trend. The amazing thing I'm seeing right now from Avalanche's perspective for Avalanche is gaming. There's a new group of gaming ideas, projects, and companies that are taking advantage of the instant finality aspect of the Avalanche blockchain. So one thing that Avalanche is known for is instant finality. So it makes sense that DeFi and gaming, where, think about it in DeFi. If you were buying Apple stock or Tesla stock on your Schwab, you cannot see the word pending and wonder if you actually bought your Tesla stock while the wild variations happen in the markets and wait, a minute, even, a minute's maybe okay, but probably not, because that thing changes really quickly, Tesla at least, but 5-10 minutes sometimes. So that instant finality works really well on Avalanche because you can instantly know that settlement and payment is at the same time. That transaction actually cleared. Gaming is the same thing. You cannot go and kill some monsters, go to the next level, only to find out that one monster was not killed. And you got to go back a level down to go finish that before you go back up. So those are the things I see that are super exciting projects in those spaces.
Absolutely. And I just seeing some of the folks that are enabling things such as moving between different environments, moving between different universes, like in my favorite book, Ready Player One, being able to go from the Star Trek universe to the Star Wars universe and jump across what are effectively different chains. Right. And I know that you talk about the fact that obviously this is a multi-chain world and being able to connect everything into an interoperable ecosystem with Avalanche. Is there anything specific that you're seeing with that type of connectivity that you think would be interesting to share in terms of connecting across different blockchains?
So I agree with your premise. Going forward, we are going to have a multi-chain world. I use a simple analog that maybe there will be a Facebook, will winner take most, but there's going to be TikTok, there will be Snapchat, other social networks. So I agree with that. I think Avalanche or Avalabs, when they architected Avalanche also thought, that. In fact, Glenn, the founder, definitely thought that. This is part of the reason why there's the concept of subnets on Avalanche. Subnets are, think of it as almost a private blockchain, but it's also a validator set on top of the Avalanche validator set. So all of those instances actually can connect with each other. So there's already 3 chains on Avalanche, the network of the X, P, and C chain. And C chain is an EVM compatible chain for Ethereum. But if there's another generation and EVM is not the lead virtual machine, something else is, Avalanche is set up so the architecture can be like a layer 0 almost, and then have someone else's new VM who's more popular at that point on top of the platform and connect to the existing EVM community.
Okay. That's really interesting. That makes a lot of sense now and thinking about it. We do have another question from the crowd here. What's going to be the aha moment for large enterprises to start coming over to the blockchain space in 2022 and beyond?
So ironically, I think we're past the aha moment. We are working with a whole bunch of large, well-known enterprises to help them create blockchain solutions, whether it is a private blockchain or allowing them to figure out ways to create applications on top of the permissionless blockchain at Avalanche. Their struggle is not necessarily the aha moment with the thought leaders inside the firm. Their struggle is getting management or getting everyone in the firm to have that same aha moment. So there are all these large organizations, there are people there with the aha, but the people who need to be invested in this movement have obvious reasons why they can't, because they are basically disintermediating themselves. And that is something that's very hard to do. It's easier for small companies, but for large companies that are the proverbial milking the cash cow, that's the advantage for entrepreneurs. That's always been the advantage. It's always been the David and Goliath thing. And that will always hopefully be the advantage and continue innovation in this country.
You just mentioned the big I word, the innovator's dilemma. I'm assuming you've read that.
I took classes with Clay Christensen. He was one of my favorite.
Oh,
rest in peace. He's no longer around.
I know.
Every time you say something, Pete, you date us. So that's not good.
No, it's okay. Listen, I will tell you, this is good. Good spot, because Innovator's Dilemma for the Crowd, Clayton Christensen, written in the 90s, I believe, right? It is the beginnings, the very start of disruptive innovation, or what he coined disruptive innovation. And it's a wonderful book. It's hard to get through the first third of it, but once your brain opens up a bit after that. Also in the 90s, Snow Crash was written, which is Neil Stephenson. I haven't read that yet, but that was just pointed out to me as a book that's been very prescient. And that was the book that coined the term the metaverse. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's been life imitating art. That's happened with that in the last, couple of years, at least the last, 5-7 years. And then before that was Neuromancer back in 84. Right. So all of these books, yes, still in my lifetime, and I'm going to guess were in your lifetime as well, John, that are really point to where this is all going. And it's amazing how some of these folks had such insight on that. Both the science fiction writers like William Gibson and Neil Stephenson, as well as Ernest Cline, who wrote Ready Player One, but also the true to life theorists like Clayton Christensen. Right. So.
Well, I think that's going back to the earlier analog I used about matching people up. And this is part of the reason why young kids still want to talk to me and you, because, when I took Clay Christensen's class at Harvard, I was that young kid. And it's amazing, like the actors and the specific technology may be different, but the framework with how to think has not changed. And it's been lifelong lessons from there that I've incorporated into my entrepreneurial career. And hopefully I can, just like Clay's shared it with so many people, but hopefully I can continue sharing with people, whether it's at Avalanche or Techstars.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Another nice question here. What are your thoughts about regulation, and how is Avalanche positioned on the matter?
Second question first, then the first.
Yep.
Avalanche has been overly compliant for good reason. In fact, we've done everything in a before we do anything, we think about compliance and regulation. We have a great general counsel in-house and a team in-house that thinks about it 24/7. Having foresight, over 2 years ago, recognizing that the world was changing and becoming more and more regulated for Web3 companies, we're trying to be ahead of that. I do think regulation is coming. I do think the biggest misperception in this space is that all crypto firms are anti-regulation. All the operators and all the players that I speak to, having a front row seat to this thing, all believe in sensible and, fair regulation and believe in protecting consumers. I can't say that for everyone, but most of them are that way. And I only encourage that there is dialogue between industry and government so that we get to a place where it's not like China and we start losing hash rate in their sense, going from 70% Bitcoin hash rate to 40%. And luckily, it's good for us in West Texas, making up a lot of that power. And then also making sure that innovation continues in the U.S. and not necessarily overseas. I know you guys are in Dublin, but that's for other reasons. But we want to keep innovation in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I hear you. It's an interesting topic, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to try this one out. So Chris Dixon from A16Z Crypto, who I'm pretty sure you're familiar with, he said on a podcast recently with Naval Ravikant from AngelList, as well as obviously he was on the Tim Ferriss show, and it was his podcast. It was two hours long, great episodes. What Chris said was that he's never met anyone in the blockchain space who is both well-informed and skeptical. Okay. Now I'm going to flip that the other way. And a regulator, or not even a regulator, but someone who's very, very much in touch with regulation, has an excellent understanding of regulation and, the basis for that. Wonder if they would ever say, I've never met anyone in the blockchain space who is both well-informed about regulation and how it works, and is also skeptical on whether or not we actually need it. Right? Can you flip that around that way? I've seen some of the leaders in the crypto space come out with open arms and say, listen, yes, we embrace regulation, wherever it may be, and there may be opportunities to actually influence that and work with those that are close with policymakers to inform them and provide them with the tools they need to be able to help do this the right way. I'm a firm believer in you never regulate technology, you regulate the service that's being provided if it needs to be. But any thoughts on how well-informed people are?
I think they're more informed today than they were even 6 months ago. And as a reminder to the audience, before I became president of Labs, I was CEO of the digital assets group at Shares Post, trying to create a security token marketplace and platform. So I worked a ton with the SEC and FINRA in order to do a change in membership agreement of their ATS to make it compliant to tokenize private securities as well as funds at the time. I can tell you as a comparison from back then, that's 17, 18 to today, people are far more informed. And Chris is right. There's still skepticism, but they are far more informed. So I think if out of those two things, how knowledgeable they are today is far greater than they were in 17 and 18.
Absolutely. Let's see. I've got one question here. I see many non-crypto startups developing a crypto strategy, even if they're not a Web3 startup, meaning they find a way to integrate crypto, even if they're not in the space. Do you see this happening already?
Yes, I see that happening. In fact, I don't know if people realize, but at the New York and NASDAQ stock exchange, there's like 15 public stocks now that are crypto related. A lot of them are miners, but they include PayPal, they include Square. That's the enablers that we talked about. And I think what this gentleman or woman is talking about as well. There are a lot of enablers. And I think from a Web3 native type perspective, that's a good thing because we're all trying to, ultimate goal, if you take a step back, is how do we get the next billion users of blockchain to happen? If you don't reach out over the bridge, if you will, then it's never going to happen. And if they're coming over the bridge on their own, that makes your life even easier.
It does. It does. I was talking to Max Kordick from Lisk about this about a month ago in London. And we were up on stage talking about the decade ahead for crypto. And I fired off a question to him in the middle of the chat. And I said, Max, do you think we can reach this tipping point of more crypto users in the world rather than non-users of crypto if this path just continues as it has with organic growth in the space and none of this, say, $250 trillion worth of global wealth coming into the space and folks like we're talking about here having a crypto strategy to bring crypto into what would have been otherwise traditional financial applications? He said, absolutely. He said it's the kids who are bringing everything in these days and the kids are powering this and that, we can reach that tipping point. I still think, though, that we can reach that tipping point a heck of a lot quicker with the transition of analog wealth into digital form. In my,
you took the words right out of what I was about to say. It's just yes. The answer is yes to what Matt said, but it's about the speed with which it happens.
Yeah. And I absolutely love it. What are the top music projects on Avalanche right now that you're excited about?
So there's two types of music projects. There are musicians who are trying to create social tokens or, event tokens around their persona. And then we're just getting into, call it business model music projects where they're trying to reinvent the supply chain or distribution of certain music. So more seeing individual musicians trying to figure out how to create NFTs, social tokens to take advantage of the better platform and more control for themselves so that they're not giving it away to intermediaries. And just starting to see music projects trying to revolutionize the music industry.
I got you. All right. I'm really a big fan of these things, that seeing music coming out, whether it be on a big project like Audius or on others that I see coming out as well. There's so many different angles to go after this industry that I think is definitely due to embrace and adopt this new technology that will put it back into the hands of the artists. Really is where it should belong, right? The creators.
For whatever reason, music has always been in the forefront of P2P. You remember Napster was the original P2P. And, blockchain is a much better P2P, but the whole P2P Napster thing really kicked off a lot of this concept of network effects and the understanding of distributed systems.
Yeah.
From a pragmatic perspective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And being able to send things through in chunks. Remember BitTorrent?
Yeah.
Right. And that was more on movies and things that were being sent through. But again, dating ourselves here. But it feels like it's happened before. It'll happen again. We just keep innovating and moving along the space. Bringing this all together today is really in support of the mentorship side of the Launchpool Web3 Techstars Accelerator program that we're kicking off in Dublin in March. And having you involved and engaged with us, we very much appreciate it. And it's excellent to get you on board for that. And anything that you're kind of most excited about when you're thinking about this program and how you might be able to be helpful to the founders coming into that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm very excited to be part of this program and help share, whatever experiences I've had and hopefully give everyone else who is trying to be entrepreneurial a jumpstart in their own journeys. But I think one thing that we need to keep in perspective is that how lucky young people are in terms of wanting to be entrepreneurial these days. And they have these channels like Techstars in order to get guidance and to do things. I am sure when Pete and I tell you from my personal experience, when I graduated college, entrepreneurialism was not like it is today. You did not have places like Techstars to fund inexperienced people, to help incubate inexperienced people, to help find mentors or advisors to help guide inexperienced people. It was more a rite of passage. You learned how to do it by on-the-job training, and there was less of an entrepreneurial mindset to begin with. So my final comment would be Techstars is one of the best programs around for young people to learn how to become an entrepreneur. And they've aggregated I looked down some of the, Web3 and also other advisors that they have like some solid people with great experience to help guide the journey or the beginning of a journey for a lot of young, great entrepreneurs, potential entrepreneurs. Take full advantage of it is basically my advice.
John, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Really appreciate it. And very excited to keep engaging with you on this and, getting involved with the program. It's awesome. So thank you so much again. Really appreciate you joining today to do this chat with us. And just wanted to say thanks to everybody for all the questions that they submitted. It was a real pleasure to talk to you about all this today, John. So thank you.
A lot of fun. Thank you, Pete.
Awesome. All right, folks, we're going to sign off there for today. That's the end of our second Web3 Convo series chat with John Wu. And we will be back within the next week. And John, thanks again.
Thanks.
See you, folks.
That does it for this week, folks. A big thanks to John Wu for opening up his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. Links to learn more about John Wu, Avalabs, and Avalanche are on our website at moneyneversleeps.ie, so check us out online. If you like what you heard, we would sincerely appreciate a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you're listening on, as it helps others to find the show. And remember, Money Never Sleeps is spelled as all one word. Also, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for mixing and editing this episode. Conan is an excellent media man to get in touch with when you're thinking about launching your own podcast. As for me, I'm an early-stage startup investor and an advisor focused on fintech and digital assets. If you'd like to talk to me about your business, drop me a line on info@moneyneversleeps.ie. Finally, till next time, thanks for listening. See ya!
Money never sleeps, pal.